you like to gather a little bit closer towards the middle, and I'll introduce myself and go through the proceedings with you. Thanks, folks. Come into the middle. Don't be scared. We'll be gentle with you tonight. Or maybe not. Okay, just by word of explanation, my name's John Keane. I'm the head of the library service. I've worked here since 1974. And in 1976 I stumbled into a club called Eric's to lecture at the Runaways. Came back the next week to watch the Sex Pistols. Thought they were crap, but enjoyed the records when they came out. And so it goes. Just to give you the flavour of tonight, we're going to have a few people to speak who've been instrumental in pulling this exhibition together. The main exhibition is through in the historic areas, and it's superb if you've not already had a glance. And behind me, I've got Storm and Norman from Eric's on the decks. Big round of applause, Storm and Norman. We're having more from Norman later. And just to explain some of the people who've been involved with this, on my left, we've got Professor Colin Fallows from Liverpool John Moores University. Can we have it up there, please, for Colin? Colin's role in this has been as a co-curator with the British Library down in London when this was assembled and shown in London. And as a result of going to London for something else, I was going around this exhibition and had a chat with the British Library, as you do, and said we need to bring this to Liverpool. Met Colin, and Colin said we've got all this Eric's archive as well as a treasure trove, so we're going to unleash that as well. So we've actually got the British Library exhibition, but stuff that's not been seen here in conjunction also, which we've got Colin to thank for and other colleagues. On Colin's left, we've got Andy Linehan from the British Library, who conceived this exhibition. Andy curates pop music for the British Library in London. Can we give it up for Andy, please? I see his family are in tonight. We're also pleased to welcome someone who I have met before in professional life, but actually I watched them on stage because the night that the Sex Pistols were crap up in Gatsby's, which was part of Eric's, with your history, when we came back down on stage was Albert Dock, local band, and I didn't know that he was in that band until fairly recently. I knew he was in its immaterial, but the timeline has told me a few things I didn't know about Liverpool, and I would urge you to look at the peak frame when you get the minute. So we want to welcome JJ, and his other claim to fame is he actually put together the yellow Eric's poster. He designed that one, the famous one, which is behind me, and the original is in the main exhibition with the Sex Pistols contract that Malcolm McLaren and Roger Eagle signed. It's a very special thing to look at. So that's the middle line. I also want to give a shout out to Kate Stewart and her colleagues from Different Studio, who've actually brought an amazing sense of how to work with the classical spaces and do something that I think Malcolm McLaren would be delighted with. So can we give it up for Kate and the team, please? Okay, that's enough from me. I'm going to pass you over to Professor Colin Fallows from Liverpool John Moores University, who basically curates all of the pop and sound stuff. Colin.
Thanks very much, John. It's a great pleasure to be here this evening and to see the exhibition finally come together, and thanks to everybody for coming along. I've got, first of all, a series of thanks, because of course putting an exhibition like this together is a real team effort. So first of all, I'd like to thank my co-curators, Steve Cleary and Andy Linehan from the British Library, and both Steve and Andy are here, and the dialogue we've had in putting this exhibition together has been very, very interesting, and this is actually the third edition of the exhibition. So it started in 2016 at the British Library, then went on to Sunderland Museum in 2017, and finally we wanted to bring it to Liverpool this year. So thanks to Steve and Andy. I'd also like to thank Polly Mills at the British Library as well for all her work and the team effort at the BL who worked with Polly. John Keane, who was so enthusiastic about bringing the exhibition here and has made it happen, and his team, David Stoker, Annie Starkey, Steve Dearden and Simon Savage, all of whom helped it happen. At LJMU, John mentioned the archives. Well, I've been trying to build a repository of counterculture at the university over the past 20 years. So it's been a big project bringing this together, and we now have in the university a world-class repository of counterculture, of which the punk archive is now the biggest punk archive in the world that we hold at the university. Thank you, Emma. A lot of the materials, as you'll know, were never intended to survive, and I see it in many ways as putting these exhibitions together as like an archaeological project, because what we're really doing is exhibiting the ruins of a lost civilization. And the sort of many media interpretations and the mythologizing of the era have really confused the whole aspects of what happened at that time. And by laying out the original artifacts, we're interested in people making their own interpretations and perhaps looking a bit beyond the media mythologizing of the era and looking at what actually happened at the time by exploring these documents. So at LJMU, I'd really like to thank my colleagues, Professor Caroline Wilkinson and Professor John Hyatt, and also the team without whom this exhibition, it simply wouldn't have been possible to do it. My colleagues in the special collections and archives, Val Stevenson, Emily Parsons and Anne Folks. So thanks to Val, Emily and Anne. Finally, I'd really like to thank, we've got three artists here this evening. One is P.T. Madden, the photographer, who in April 1976 stood in front of the stage of the Nashville Club in London and took a whole series of stage frame shots of the Sex Pistols for his own collection, and he kept them under his bed for 40 years until 2016, when we first exhibited them, Wilkinson Gallery, London, and a sample of them in the British Library exhibition. And those photos are available for you to view this evening in the entrance to the Hornby Library. And Paul is here this evening. He's hiding behind this bookshelf here. So if you want to say hello to Paul. And they constitute some of the earliest photographs of the Sex Pistols. And Paul, I'm sure, would be delighted to tell you more about them if you accost him during the exhibition this evening. I'm also very, very pleased to welcome here this evening another photographer, Emma Harrison, who's hiding behind the bookshelf over here. And Emma will also, no doubt, be very pleased to talk to you about her photographs, which is a complete concert of the slits. That Emma, again as a young art student working in London at the time, in the late 70s, 77, 78, like Paul, took the art school camera and took these incredible dynamic photographs of the slits. And this evening is the unveiling of those. They have never been seen in public for 40 years since taking the photographs. So this is a first this evening. And thanks to Emma for agreeing to unveil them at this exhibition tonight. So thanks, Emma. And finally, I'd like to thank my dear friend and colleague, Mr. John Campbell, for coming along this evening, and we're going to have a little chat together in a few minutes' time about John's views on the era. We were at the Sex Pistols concert at Eric's together on October the 15th, 1976, and John played on the same evening as John mentioned just before. So, but first of all, before we do that, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Andy Linehan, co-curator of the exhibition, to say a few words on behalf of the British Library.
Thanks, Colin. This is going to be a lot briefer than it was intended to be, because I think John and Colin have just thanked most of the people I wanted to thank, but I will say again that we couldn't have done this without John Keane and David Stoker and everybody at Liverpool Central Library, including Annie Starkey, Kate Stewart and Different Design. A fabulous job, thank you very much. All our lenders, and also everyone at Liverpool John Moores University. We're very pleased to see this happening here at Liverpool. It's taken a while, and I think Liverpool Central Library staff have been bombarded with emails for the last 6 months from us trying to get everything as right as we possibly could, and we're very, very happy with the way it looks at the moment. This is just one initiative that the British Library is doing to try and get the library working with libraries around the country through the Living Knowledge Network, and we're working on a couple of other projects with Liverpool, I believe, and we hope they'll all be as successful as this, because we really want to be able to share the assets of the National Library around the UK. The other thing I will say is that a lot of people asked us why we're putting on an exhibition about punk rock at the library, at the British Library. The intention of it really was to draw people's attention to the idea that a library, although a splendid room this is not just about books like this. A library has all sorts of material in it. I come from a sound archive background. We have an incredible collection of sound recordings, sort of thing that you'll be playing here earlier, but interviews, documentaries, features, all that sort of thing, which is information about the music and relating to all the recordings that we have. And so this exhibition, we hope, will tell people that all this sort of material is available for study, for enjoyment in the British Library, and we try to make it as accessible as possible within the copyright laws that we have in this country. And so we want to do more of this to get our collections out and around the country. So it's great to see this. It's, I hope you like the exhibition. We certainly do. It's through there, and please go in and enjoy it. Thank you very much.
I'd like to introduce you to John Campbell, and we're going to just talk for a short while about the exhibition and also about recollections from that particular time and a particular perspective on that. So, John, I just wanted to ask you to, if you could recall your recollections of that particular evening and the backstory to that evening, because I know you went to London to see the Sex Pistols before the event in Liverpool.
Yes, I suppose it starts for me with coming to Liverpool Art School, and with, as you know, Henry Priestley was in the same year, and we ended up following in the footsteps of Deaf School and forming an art school band. And sometime in that year, which was, I think, early 76, something like that, Henry and I had heard about these little waves, these little kind of cells of energy going off, like, I don't know, in New York, with New York Dolls. And down in London, there were things happening with what was then known as the kind of pub rock circuit, which was becoming more energetic. When I was maybe 6 months earlier, I knew bands called things like Starry-Eyed and Laughing and Bridgely Swartz and all this kind of thing. And there seemed to be more energy coming through the pub rock thing that Henry and I were investigating, along with what we'd kind of started to read in the music press. So we'd started to look at bands like Eddie and the Hot Rods, and I think there's one called 9 Below Zero, and this kind of thing. There was energy and attitude in them, which became later on part of this new punk thing that happened. So that's one of the things that interested Henry and I. Coming back to talking about the night in Liverpool at Eric's, we'd heard of this kind of, I suppose aggression and attitude of the Sex Pistols were going to bring. And for me, having seen them in London, one of the big things about them as well, to me, it was the kind of attitude to me that you might see in a lot of comedy at the time. It was more slapstick for me, and had kind of roots in British sitcom and maybe strip cartoons, this kind of thing as well, which was one of the appealing things of it to me. So when we made the flyer behind, it was really the idea of punk don't make me laugh, was the fact that it did make us laugh, and I think that was one of the big things about it then. Besides the energy and drive we saw in a lot of these bands such as Dr. Feelgood and all that, there was also certainly an element of comedy in it to me.
Thanks, John. And I think it's one of the aspects that often gets lost in the media interpretations is the comedy. And the other aspect that I think could be emphasised at the time is the artistic aspect and the tradition, the roots of what was coming forward at that time in early 20th century movements such as Dada, which again had a real comedic element. And when I would go to the shop Sex in 75, 76, it was really, it was called a shop, but it was very small, looked very like an installation space in a gallery. There was hardly any stock, and what was there was really expensive. And so seeing T-shirts in frames at the time and items that you would rarely want but were much more expensive than ordinary clothes in the shop gave it this kind of artistic atmosphere. And being at art school in the time, it was easy to draw those lines between Dada and Futurism and punk. And I think the other aspect that would be interesting to talk about is that you being from Manchester but studying in Liverpool, and part of the history is that the Sex Pistols played at the Free Trade Hall in Manchester, and Manchester music changed forever. Whereas in Liverpool, we have your irreverent flyer and poster saying, "Don't make me laugh," on it. So there's a kind of a cultural difference. Now I wondered if you could say something about that, being from Manchester and in Liverpool, and that sort of, how do you embrace that contradiction that rarely rides against accepted history?
Well, for me, I think the Sex Pistols, obviously it's part of what Liverpudlians are, the way they were embraced here. But they're also, when they originally came here and played Eric's, which was the Gatsby Club upstairs, which wasn't even a disco. It was a nightclub called Cabaret Bar. They were framed differently. I mean, when I saw them down at the Mark England, and they were in a club, low ceilings, packed to the rafters, hot and sweaty, the kind of environment, that kind of an intimidating approach works well in. But if you're on a low stage, the other side of an empty dance floor, and you have your swathed in drapes and almost a proscenium arch around you, you can see a different kind of thing. You can see the history of it, like you spoke before about almost vaudevillian, almost kind of a music hall tradition. There could be a bit of Little Titch in there, or there could be a crew of slapstick acrobats or something. It was that kind of thing that was appealing to me at the time, and I think that's why they may have been seen as well differently in Liverpool than they were in Manchester, because of the context they were originally seen.
And that particular context is something that we could talk a lot more about, and we have some flyers in the exhibition. A lot of the Sex Pistols' early performances were either at art schools or unlikely venues like strip clubs in Soho and various other carefully chosen venues that really presented them almost as though they were in an installation space. So I think we can talk a lot more about this. And we will be doing a series of events in association with the exhibition, and John and I will be further conversing on this very subject at some point in the near future, to be announced by the library here. So for now, we'd like you all to visit the exhibition, which is in the Hornby Library behind you. And thanks very much to everybody for coming this evening.
Thanks very much, everyone. One last shout out. I was playing in a band in '76, and I have fond memories of playing the Metro. And I've been struggling to find out about the Metro, and I know there's probably people in the room who remember stuff. I've got a couple of old photos of us playing there. But if anyone's got some memories of the Metro to share, I think Doreen might. I've read something that you remember stuff about the Metro, and maybe Deaf School had a photograph taken on the album I've got there. But that's a personal shout. If anyone remembers the Metro, come and fill me in, because we played there about 4 times and I can't remember, it's too long ago. Okay, everyone, enjoy your night. Please enjoy the exhibition. Big shout out for the guys. And don't forget, we've got merchandise. We've got PT Madden stuff, we've got other stuff, Eric's t-shirts, and if you enjoy the exhibition, we've also got a donation box on the ground floor that's flashing if you can spare a couple of your shekels. Enjoy yourselves, folks.